My mother left when I was 4.5 on Christmas Eve.
What did that do to you inside?
I always felt like the black sheep, like an outsider. I always went my own way. So then I went from that to starting to drink, starting to take drugs, and bought this flat. And unbeknownst to me, absolutely horrific antisocial behaviour, destruction of property, and ended in death threats for me. I've done my share, I've pulled up my freaking sock. If you're an actual God, if you're up there, if there's something up there for a greater good, then you will give me a bloody crystal clear sign on what I need to do next, or I'm done.
So what was a catalyst for you to go, you know what, I can do that. I can actually take this and help other people now?
It's that pure, raw intention of who you're being in each moment that translates into your vision, your idea of the good life.
I think a lot of people are in that place where they question who they are.
Just do a pause, a check and a reset, and intentionally choose your version of the good life.
That's the first place I go with people as well. And surprisingly, most people have not really dug into that.
What is your idea of the good life? Because most of us don't know when we're asked. How can you create it if you don't know what it is?
Wow. Welcome to the Tomorrow Is Not Today podcast. Today I have all the way from WA, Donna Martin, who we've known, 2 or 3 years now. I think we've been in communication with things. And Donna has been a marvellous support and contributor to the Tomorrow Is Not Today magazine as well. Has been on the podcast previously, but I love Donna's story. Where she's come from is definitely the opposite to where she is now and how she helps people. And that's what the podcast is all about. So Donna, tell everybody a little bit about you and how you help people at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Kingsley. So I'm a mum of 3 boys, first and foremost, and I'm a burnout specialist, a mentor and a speaker. And I help people through my business, The Good Life Approach. It's creating greater clarity, calm and confidence in our lives, Kingsley, so that we can actually live our own version of the good life. That's my passion.
And you do that very strongly and getting better and better at that all the time, I've got to say. Now, you don't have a Western Australian accent.
No, I'm an original Derry girl.
So where are you from originally?
I'm from Derry in Northern Ireland, Kingsley, and I say the Derry girl because it's all over Netflix, and that is my era of growing up. So when you're looking to understand my background and different things, it is quite closely raw to the bone representation of it, yeah.
Okay, nice. So now we're going back to your story. So we're going to, in getting to your story into why you're actually helping people the way you do at the moment, we're going to go back to being a Derry girl. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, the town, and a little bit about home.
Yeah, so I'm from a place called Derry City in Northern Ireland, and it's interesting because depending on your political affiliate, or your religion of Catholic and Protestant, because this is where people identify, they'll either say you come from Derry if you're Catholic or Londonderry if you're a Protestant. But the interesting thing is, Kingsley, my daddy is Catholic, my mammy is a British Protestant. So the contrast of where I grew up, I was born in 1980, and the contrast of where I grew up, I found this really interesting because there was such a harsh divide over a lot of different political and religious stuff that thankfully is settling Derry to go to now is an absolutely beautiful place. But in the 80s, it was quite horrific. A lot of bombings, a lot of police, a lot of army, a lot of violence. So my growing up was really good in one sense of running around the streets, free to roam, free to build trees, free to play. But you had that violent part. You had police checkpoints going through the shops. You had bombs going off while you were going to your work in a restaurant where you would just divert around a back street and it was normal practice. You had riots going on certain times of the year. So all that was like an average growing up for me. The police were in the streets with their guns. And Kingsley, my husband is from the south of Ireland, and I never knew till I was in my 30s the police in the south of Ireland, which is, we're all part of Ireland, but the police in the south of Ireland don't carry guns unless they're in a specialist force. My belief was that all the police around the world carried guns because that's what they done in Northern Ireland.
Wow. So for you, bombings, back streets, police with guns out, that's just a normal part of your everyday life.
That was it. And tanks going down the street with the army men all jumping out with their guns, going to raid houses or going to break up a riot, or even just doing your day-to-day shopping. I remember going through the checkpoints and stuff, and where are you going and what are you doing? And just like when you think of it now, and I think of my kids and the life we have in WA, like it's phenomenal. And Derry is not like that anymore. I love it. It's a beautiful place. It's where I came from, and I'm glad that it has evolved over the years because it's beautiful. But that was the reality growing up in the 80s and even in the 90s and stuff before the ceasefire, Kingsley. It was very volatile. People getting killed, people being shot. What's on the news? Where has bombs been let off? Just like you couldn't go with a policeman back in the day without them being threatened or you being threatened. And I remember secretly, which I can put on another time, going with a policeman, and it was a huge deal. Like it was just bananas, and you're going, the divide of religions, they being allowed to go with a Protestant or being allowed to go with somebody in the police was just an absolute no.
That's such a different world to where where we are now. It's interesting because obviously we saw this on the news over here, but to hear the inside, what it was really like, that's a completely different thing altogether. So obviously you grew up with that. That's part of your life. So danger around you, that's normal. And then take it in a little bit more closer. What was home life like then?
So home life, if I go back to my first memory of home life, Kingsley, it was when my mother left at 4.5. And this isn't a new story. It's something I've shared before with people. My mother left when I was 4.5 on Christmas Eve.
Wow.
That memory is the earliest memory I have from childhood. So when I go back to the starting point of my ideas, my beliefs, what I carried, my values, my non-worth, whatever it was, I connect the dots to that timeline of that experience. And when you think of that, yeah, it's interesting as an adult, because in hindsight, when I look or people ask me, I'm like, my mother was obviously not well, wasn't coping, 5 kids back to back, was maybe severely depressed. And when I think of being a mom to 3 young boys, and I think of the difficulties or the different issues that I had after the kids, it's a lot, it's overwhelming. And you can probably relate as a parent.
Definitely. But I guess one of the questions then that comes to mind is, now obviously you were 4.5 at the time, coming to Christmas, does that still affect you now? Have you gotten through that? Did it affect you for a little while?
It affected me I would say it definitely did for a while. Like, I just remember around Christmas times then when she wasn't there because she had gone back to England, she had remarried, and she used to send presents and stuff, and she would ring us on the house phone, and, but it was just like a stranger at the other end of the phone. Like, we didn't really know her, and what I associated them was just somebody that give you extra presents. It wasn't really a thing. But for now, no, it doesn't affect me. For me, I love Christmas as the joy and the magic of that magical mystery, that gift of being present. So for me, I think it actually went the opposite way, Kingsley. And it didn't just happen in an instant that it went the opposite way. But for me, in the reframe and my ideas or beliefs that she wasn't well, not that she didn't love 5 kids of a motherly love, but that she just wasn't able to manage. I just think I'm lucky to have my voice. I'm lucky to be present in the moment and just not make it all about presence, but to make it about us as a family, as a unit that's that's all in one space, that are living in a place that we want to live in, living our good life with love, with awareness, with that is what it presents to me now, not just Christmas, but every day.
And obviously this, unfortunately, is a very common story for that to happen. As a 4.5-year-old, your mother leaving, Christmas Eve, you would have been very excited. What did that do to you inside?
I just remember I remember the pink floral pajamas that I was wearing. I have a scene or a vision in my head because I've gone back over this with different therapies, TRTP or different regression therapies, and I just have an image of me, but not me looking at me down a hall and her walking out, and that the words of her saying, I don't love you, asking her to stay, and her saying, no, I don't love you, and just closing the door. And now, Kingsley, I don't know if I made that up in my head. I don't know if that is something that was just imprinted or if it was actually said because she was trying to just make it better in the moment. I don't really know, but I just remember feeling a sadness. I just remember feeling an emptiness, like a lost. And I felt that feeling for many years to come, like lost, not knowing who I was, not identifying. If she doesn't love me and she's my mommy, then who else is going to love me? Like my daddy loves me, but who else if she can walk away?
Yeah, so it puts a bit of a fear and I guess an insecurity of the fact that, okay, my dad loves me because he's my dad, but do people really love me? So that living with that fear, going through school, teenage years, that sort of thing, how did that affect you? Was that a conscious thing? Was it a subconscious thing that you sort of reacted out of?
I think 'cause even when I think of that now in Kingsley, I've done a lot of different modalities and different work, and I'm good to talk about the story or the scenarios. But when I think of that, and I always felt like the black sheep, like an outsider. I always went my own way, done my own thing. I was always very empathetic, always read people's energies, could always really tune into people. People always came to me to share stuff. But I always felt the need to overhelp people. And I don't know whether that need came from that lack of, will they love me, or will they love me if I do more, or will they love me if whatever. Do you know what I mean? So even though part of me was strong enough to go, I'm just going to do my own thing and go my own way, and I didn't always get sucked into things, part of me then would get sucked into silly things, and I'm like, well, trying to be liked or trying to not feel like the outsider or the person on the outskirts. Do you know what I mean? Just where you're just kind of sitting there and looking, going, I'm in, but I'm not really in. Like I'm not, I don't know. I always just felt like an outsider, like an underdog, or like you were just on the radar of kind of everybody else.
So is it sort of a thing where you were wondering if you were accepted for who you are?
Always. Yeah. And for years.
Was that at home as well by your siblings and by your dad, or was it sort of more outside of the home?
No, it was outside, because inside, like my two older brothers, they were older, they were heading out, they were in the mix with their own friends. So my sister and me are closer in age, and my younger brother. So we would have been closer in age and round the streets and more of that connection. So at home, we all knew where we were, what was going on, what was happening inside the home. But it was the outside that I always felt like the outsider, the poor me, the pity party. There's the one tease, Donna, aha, you've no mammy, aha, half a Jaff, meaning half Protestant, half Catholic. So there was just so many different things, the elements, hand-me-down clothes, just not having branded. And I didn't care about any of that. I didn't care about the branded and the material stuff, because I knew how much my daddy grafted. Like I knew and I could see from a very early age the pressures he was under, what he was going through. So it was nearly trying to relieve some of that in any way we could in the home. But the outside part of it, then going through all that stuff, it was like some of it didn't bother me, but then people going, aha, no mommy, or just sneering about silly things. It was just like, oh, that. I remember standing with my sister crying in the back lane and stuff, and people were teasing us and just going on home then and just going, they're just knowing, oh, they're just not nice. Or, but yeah, I had many times like that.
So it sounds obviously a lot of bullying going on in that case.
It was interesting, Kingsley, because it was, I would say it was bullying now that, yeah, okay, you know, it was bullying. But at the time, I think it was kids that just didn't know any better. And whether they were listening at home to what was being said, or whether they were, I don't know. I don't know, because they were our group of friends, some of them, but they were still, like, it wasn't like it was a random person or a person in school. These were people that we actually ran about with in groups that would be teasing me. Like my core friend, Karen, that I grew up with my whole life, like my lifelong best friend from no age, from down the street. She was the only one out of that group that never ever did that completely got it. So that was my person, and still to this day. But it was like the other people that were in groups that were meant to be your friends. So from a very early age, Kingsley, I always questioned. I could feel things, knew things, ignored things, questioned. But in that, I didn't even really know who I was. I felt like I was an outsider, but an outsider to what? Because I didn't know who Donna was. When I looked in the mirror, I had no idea.
Yeah, explain that a little bit more. You didn't know who Donna was.
I would look and you would have all those labels like, ha ha, no mommy, ha ha, half a jaff, look at you, per you. And I would just be looking at this person in the mirror and going, I've no feedback for you. Like I've no love for you, I've no joy for you, I've no idea. Are you strong? Are you brave? Are you... I would just be looking and being like, well, why would they want to be your friend? But then on the other side, why would they want to do that? Why would they want to hurt you? Why would they want to be mean? So then going back, my daddy always said, treat others how you want to be treated. So in my head, I'd be like, well, I wouldn't treat anybody like that. That's not very nice. So why would they treat me? So I was always in my head, Kingsley, from a very, very early age, questioning and yeah, just questioning and curious.
It's actually really interesting you say, because I think whether you're a kid or whether you're an adult, I think a lot of people are in that place where they question who they are. They question what their identity is. They question what their value is. Now, things can look fantastic. Things can look great. But at the same time, when you really stop and ask people, question people, who are they? What's important to you? What are your values? What do you bring? I think a lot of people, even now, as adults, successful adults, face that.
That's your identity shift. That's your everything that we do, that we create, that we pass on, pay forward. It's regarding your identity, and it's your core, not from the teeth out, not what you say to somebody else, us having a conversation, but it's that core internal knowing, internal gut feeling that sits right there, what we call the solar plexus, where your identity sits. You'll feel if you're good with you, or you'll feel if you're not. You'll feel if you're skirting on the outskirts of something, or if you're being true to you. You always know. It's whether or not you want to pay attention and give yourself permission to do something about it.
And I think that's part of the hard part, isn't it? Is, are you willing to face that, or are you just going to pretend it doesn't exist?
Yeah.
I want to get to a point later on, we're going to come back to it, as to how you actually made that shift, because obviously you've made that shift with the work you've done now, the life you have now, all of that sort of stuff. You've made that massive shift. But before we get there, how did that affect you? Because when you go through life as a teenager and a young adult, some of the things that you think that you do, the decisions you make, and your view of life and other people can be incredibly distorted. And so that has an impact on how we think and what we do. So how did that impact your life as a teenager going through this? Because this, I think, can also help some parents with teenagers going through stuff as well.
So as a teenager, Kingsley, my daddy, he was very open in the sense he would just say, treat others how you want to be treated. If you're not in a scenario that's good, you know to remove yourself. If you need help, always ask, always come to me. I'm always here, always open. Don't ever be afraid to say anything. And so he gave us that leeway, if you like, to experience or to do what we wanted to do. So as a teenager, I went through a phase of going to mass as a Catholic, like every single day in the evening time and stuff, just because I remember that deep desire within Kingsley to seek out what it is that I was searching for, what was going to fix this emptiness, what was going to fix this feeling of lost or whatever I was seeking. And I remember just going, please God, please God, please God, please, can you please help me? Like, I know you're there. Can you just help me to figure out what's going on so that I feel better, that I know where my place in the world is. And I done that for a while, and then I got fed up. And that's not to say everybody's story, Kingsley, because my daddy didn't go to mass, neither did any of my siblings. They were all like, Donna, seriously, what are you on? And so I went from a stage of going, God, give me these answers, whether I was listening or not listening, to going, do you know what? This isn't working for me. So then I went from that to starting to drink, to starting to go to nightclubs, to starting to take drugs, to starting to get myself into scenarios, parties, events, places that I didn't need to be in, Kingsley. And then that got me questioning a whole other type of, what are you playing at, Donna? What are you doing? Like, I went from one extreme of all in on God in a chapel to the other extreme of drink, drugs, poor relationships, poor choices, and a whole other extreme at the other side.
So it's really a time of the lack of identity, lack of who you were, put you into a real searching mode, where were you searching for an identity? Were you searching for a value? Were you searching for who am I in this world? Where do I fit? What was it you were searching for?
When I looked at I just remember having this strong urge of just seeking something, to remember something or know something about me that I had forgotten. Like, I had this emptiness. I carried this thing of not being sure of me, not loving me, doubting me, questioning me, always feeling like an outsider, like I wasn't worthy, like I wasn't good enough, like what I had to say or do didn't have much value in comparison to other people. There was other people way better. And I didn't like that feeling, Kingsley. And going through the extremes, I don't know, was I searching, if I think about it now, for my own love, but I was searching for it from other people because of my imprinted memory of my mommy saying, I don't love you. For me, going back and doing therapy and different things, I would say the subconscious correlation with that memory to going, well, who's going to love me? But in reality, what I didn't realise was that I had no idea how to love myself, Kingsley. I knew my daddy loved me. Did I know what a mother's love was like? No. did I know what actual, I knew what love meant in terms of daddy loving us, but in terms of self-love, I had no idea. I didn't respect myself. I didn't value myself. And it was interesting because the drink and the drugs was an escape for me then. It was a way out of not feeling that shame, that embarrassment, that guilt, and actually the tiredness, the exhaustion of actually searching and seeking and not having an answer. Does that make sense? Because this was for years, like years, well up teens and into my 20s. It was just going, do you know what? I'm so over feeling like this and so over searching for answers.
So you were probably, and I'm going to put words in your mouth a little bit here probably, but it sounds like you're out there searching, you're doing all this stuff, the drinking, the drugs, the relationships, all this sort of thing. That was happening. And probably when you're out, people looking onto you going, oh, she's having the best time, she's loving this. But inside you were obviously feeling something a little different.
Kingsley, inside I was dying. Inside I was absolutely lost. I was curled up in a ball as a young child that had no idea where she was going. That was the crucifixion inside of me. And what was going on the outside was just like a surface survival mode, just getting on with it.
And what I want is for people listening or watching this to understand that, because that's not uncommon. In fact, it's really, really common for what you're talking about. But a lot of people think they're the only ones, that everyone else, because it looks great on the outside, so everyone else is doing really, really well, but they're the only ones that feels like this. And it's definitely not the case, because we all, until we find that, we all feel very hollow and we're putting on a mask and we're putting on something that's not real. And I want people to understand that it doesn't matter who you are, what you're going through, what you've done, or what's been done to you. You are valuable and you do carry a lot of value just because you are here on this planet. And so what happened to you? Like, what was the trigger then for you to actually make a change?
I remember I had so many, it wasn't just one thing, Kingsley, that was, right, you're done and dusted. It was, I think, an accumulation of nights out, of drinking, of drugging, of being in relationships, being in parties, doing things that I felt shitty about doing or felt guilty about. And I just remember feeling that shitty. Shit after shit after shit after shit, so an accumulation of different experiences. And I just remember thinking, there has to be a better way. There absolutely has to be a better way. And I think at the time, The Secret had come out with Rhonda Byrne, and a friend of mine, Kira, she had the book, her sisters had the book, they'd all read it, they were all chatting about it. And I remember then reading this book and going, okay. And a lot of the things in it I could relate to, because I was unintentionally manifesting things, jewelry, cash, jobs, experiences for years. So coinciding with all this craziness, Kingsley, I was also doing this unbeknownst to me, which is mad. And only when I read that book, I was like, okay, so I can see threads of things in my life, and I can see threads of experience and people and whatever. So that got me into the journey of looking at personal development and stuff, and looking at the experience and looking at my idea and thought processes. That brought me to Bob Proctor. That brought me to a lot of different things that kind of just opened a gap in the door. It didn't kick it wide open. It wasn't like an epiphany or whatever else, but it was just like, okay. But then I would fall back into my ways of doing what I was doing, and then it would feel shitty again, and then it would be like, okay. And I think then at the age of 23, I decided, right, enough is enough. I am going to go and I'm going to do my nursing. And there was two ladies that I was a home help while I was working in a restaurant, Kingsley. when I was doing my drinking and drugging and cruising, and I had had an opportunity to do nursing already, but I didn't want to do it because it was in a different place in Coleraine, so you would have to travel on a train for 40 minutes. I was like, nah. And I was like, the money's rubbish. I don't want to. So even though I loved helping people and had always done it, I was like, nah. So if cruisy job came up, because I didn't drive, with being a home help. So you would go into people's homes, you would help, you would do cooking, cleaning, help them if they needed washed, help them with basic stuff. So I came across two women, and they lived round the corner from me in a beautiful home in a beautiful area of where we lived, Kay and Margaret. And she was a radiographer, and I can't remember, Margaret had a really good job as well, but they started planting the seeds within me, I'd say 2 years before that, when I was 21. God, Donna, you would make a great nurse. God, Donna, you're really kind, you're really caring. Now, Kingsley, I never had anybody speak to me like that before in my lifetime. It's not language we used at home. It's not language that my daddy would say, I love you. But there was no, you're amazing, you'd be really good at this is a really, none. So this language was foreign to me. So when these women were saying to me, Donna, you're really good at this, like you're really kind, you're really caring, you have a really good manner, I was looking at them going, what are you looking for? I didn't get it. And it took about 2 years and them coaxing me to do my stuff at the tech to get into university. It took 2 years of me going to their house and them implanting this to say, Donna, you should apply to university to be a nurse. And nobody in our house had been to university, Kingsley. I was still out sessioning and everything. And it was like, oh, okay, so maybe I might be smart enough. They're telling me, Kay's a radiographer, Margaret, they've really good jobs. They're in a really beautiful home in a really good area. Maybe I could trust what they're telling me, and maybe I could start believing that I might, by some magical miracle, get into university and by some miracle actually become a nurse. And Kay had had a fall and broke her hip. And I had put in my nursing application. And unfortunately, in the January, the end of the January, the 26th of January, Kay passed away. And I think that next week, I got my letter in from the nursing board to say that I had an interview to go and be one of the first in Derry to be in the University of Ulster in their nursing programme. And I remember just crying, Kingsley, and I remember telling Margaret, the lady that lived with her, and she was absolutely delighted. And when I went to that interview, I think it was 2 weeks later, the middle of February, I could feel Kay here. I could just feel, as much as somebody standing behind you in a shop, I could feel her here with her hand on my shoulder. And I could feel her, and we were in a room of like 20 odd nursing students, I think it was, and all these heads and deans, and way out of my comfort zone, Kingsley. My inner voice, my noise is going, you shouldn't be here, you don't deserve a place here, you shouldn't, this isn't for you, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough. And everything bar her steady hand took to sit me down in the seat, Kingsley, shaking to go through and talk in your interview. And that was the changing point to go, and I started my nursing degree in the September. And that was the catalyst of transiting out of the drinking and the drugging and the seed of, okay, maybe I could actually do this. But I had a complete meltdown 2 months later because my granny died, who was my pillar stone. And then I was going to chuck on nursing. I was like, no, I just can't. I can't do it. And then my granny's presence presented itself.
It's really interesting that it took 2 years for two obviously beautiful ladies to tell you who you were and what you had capability of. And I think quite often, and I've heard this story more than once, where people have this view of themselves because of stuff that's happened. And if you look at it, it's like, it may not seem like a lot to some people, But your mother walking out at 4.5 on Christmas Eve, I don't love you, the impact that can have on somebody is just enormous, and it flows through the rest of our life. And then you had these two beautiful ladies come and tell you who you really are, what your value really is, what you truly have to offer, what you're capable of. And I think every one of us, no matter who we are, can find that good in other people and tell them what's there and tell them what can happen. Because you wouldn't be who you are now if it wasn't for those ladies telling you that. You wouldn't be helping the number of people that you're helping now if those ladies weren't telling you that. I think that's such a powerful, powerful thing.
So I was just going to say, I think the fact that they seen something in me that I had been searching for years, but still couldn't see because I was pushing so hard, or I just couldn't conceive in my human logic, my human mind. I had nothing to compare it to. I had nothing there to compare and say, and only through them mirroring that consistently and consistently and consistently just planted small seeds and just kept watering and watering and watering. And all those baby steps, Kingsley, then.
And you know what's interesting about that? They didn't put anything in you. They just drew out what was already there. Because that's who you were. All the way.
Yeah.
It is so cool. It really, really is. So then you become a nurse because that's obviously who you are as a person. You're a carer. You love to, and I've seen this in you. That's who you are as a person, that you do find the good in people and you do that to other people now. Basically, that's what you spend your life doing, is that for other people. So you become a nurse, and then what happens? Take us to the next phase.
So I qualified as a nurse in 2026, and I got my first job in a palliative care or an oncology hematology ward, which also had palliative care in it. And I'd been there on one of my placements, and then I had the opportunity to be there on a contract. So I'd done that, but at the same time in my home life, I was living in my daddy's home, but he was living with his girlfriend, and I was sharing a house with my brother. And so whatever had happened, me and my brother had fell out at that time. And I decided then that, okay, I've got my first job. I can now get a mortgage and buy my own place. I don't need to be here anymore. Miss Independent, this is what I'm going to do. And so it was the height of the boom. And so I bought a flat in an area that I'd been to school in, Kingsley, and I paid way over the odds literally at the peak of the boom, and bought this flat. And unbeknownst to me, it just opened a can of worms that was for 2 years ended up absolutely horrific. Antisocial behaviour, destruction of property, and ended in death threats for me. So yeah, I kind of summed that up in a nutshell, but that was my phase of nursing, starting in palliative care, going through 2 years of, just horrible scenarios.
So you're a nurse, you're out there helping people, you're buying a house, you're trying to get ahead in life, yet you're getting death threats. How does that work?
In my head, Kingsley, this is what I was saying, and it's interesting. So when I bought a flat that was up a top flat, and there was one below me, but the one below me I didn't know was empty, and they had used it as a drug den. So all the teenagers, and it was the end part of a cul-de-sac where you could kick the ball and whatever else. And so I didn't realise this. So they had all got used to congregating around us, mass different numbers. This is where they would go to hide out during school time, to smoke, to drink, to take drugs, all of this. So naive as I was then at 26, buy my own place, I remember going to them going, look, lads, this is my flat now. I've bought it. I own it. I'm a nurse. I look after people. Come on, can you go and pick somewhere else to go? And they more or less just laughed at me. And in my naivety, Kingsley, I was like, surely, like they can respect, like we respect other people's property. They were like, good luck, love, with that. They absolutely trashed my car, tried to kick in the front door. The first night that I moved in, I'd gone to the cinema with my friends, and when I come back, there was about 50 people. They'd organised a rave via Facebook outside my house. And so they were all drinking. They had a big beatbox, big tunes blaring. They had mass crowd of teenagers, all ages. I went, opened the gate to go down. There was somebody actually taking a piss in my garden. When I asked them all to leave, they laughed at me. I had to go in, lock the door. They smashed through a Budweiser bottle at my kitchen window, smashed the window, left glass all over. I rang the police, and the police said, love, that's a no-go area. We can't go in there. So the reality, Kingsley, dropped like a lead balloon. And I just went, I'll not even say it on the podcast, but I was like, shit, what have I done? And I remember just curled up in a ball and pulling the duvet over my head and sobbing. Just absolutely sobbing. I couldn't go out. I couldn't leave the house. The music was blaring. The police wouldn't come. And I had to get up at 6 a.m. for my shift at work. Going under people that were dying, going under people getting treatment, going under people that were newly diagnosed. And that went on then. The more I challenged them, the more they would be riled up. If I parked my car outside the house, they would come out and just constantly kick a ball at it. They would aim to be there at similar times. They would just be there kicking the ball off the kitchen window. You would go in and you would see where they've tried to put stuff through the letterbox or tried to kick at the front door to destroy it. Just ridiculous things. Tried to kick the wing mirror off the car, scored it with keys and stones, put down the tires, tried to kick the windows. And then I remember going through, I think we'd a multiple run of so many weeks where people were constantly dying. They were either end stage, they were unexpected, they'd just come in, they'd reacted bad to treatment. And I just remember getting to a point, Kingsley, where I think I was nearly 2 years in at this stage, and I just completely broke down. And I hadn't really told my friends or anything what was going on. I had tried to talk to them a couple of times, and just any time it was just always fighting. Then when I told my friends, because they were from the area, they put me in touch with people. Now, one of the counsellors in the area, I was told to ring them. And the person turned around and says to me, Kingsley, you were stupid enough to buy in the area, so you can just more or less tick your oil. And this was like a top counsellor for that specific area at the time that I was told to go to for support. They could nip this in the bud. And that was their response. You're stupid enough to buy it. Tick your oil.
Crazy.
Yeah, you made your bed, lie in it. Yeah. So I told my friends, and my friends were connected with other people who passed on the message, and everything was hushed, and they set up a community watch where we would go around and different things. So then it became part of the news. The newspaper came out and done an article. It became part of a thing for a while. And now the people doing the community watch, they were lovely, Kingsley. They were really nice, and nobody had realised what I had been going through that whole time. I just didn't want to hassle people, didn't want to bother people, just thought nobody's going to care. Why would they be bothered? This was her attitude. Why would anybody be different? So I was blown away when people then wanted to help. But then it got to a point where they just started getting more riled up when the people that were doing the community watch then kind of challenged them, says to them, you know you're not meant to be here. I remember going down to them, Kingsley, and I think I'd come from a shift where a young person had just died. And I remember going down to them and just saying, look, lads, I've just watched somebody die this evening. Like this is what I do. Do you think it's fair that now that I'm paying money for this mortgage and this is my home, that I can't go into my home and I can't be safe and I can't be whatever, and you're destroying my car and you're destroying my property? Do you think this is okay? And whatever it has happened, it just completely escalated. And the next thing it was, you're effed. You're dead. We're going to get you. We've had enough. We're done with you being here. You're not here anymore. We're after you. You're dead. And at that, Kingsley, then it was just like, oh, come on. I was just like, that was the last straw, because there was another adult there. They took me and said, Donna, this has to be reported to the police. This is done. This is gone. It's just gone way too far. You can't just band-aid it. You can't keep just going on or ignoring or hoping they're not getting the picture, and they're not going to. And that was at Kingsley. I moved back into my daddy's house and I kept paying my mortgage for months, even though I wasn't there. I went to the Citizens Advice. I asked, what can I do? What's the best way forward? At that time, the market completely crashed. I bought the flat for like 110,000 sterling, and it was valued at something like £38,000. Wow. And I was still paying a mortgage because in my defiance, I was always told that don't get a credit card unless you can pay it off. Don't buy something unless you have the money for it. You get your mortgage, you pay it off. And so even though all these experts around me, Kingsley, were telling me, this is what you have to do, I refused. And then I had a complete breakdown. And I had to go off work on the sick. And I remember at that time just being so distraught, going, why me? Why again? All the shit with my mammy, all the shit growing up, all the shit in my teenage years. Then I finally thought I had found where I was going. Then Kay dies, then my granny dies, then I get through my nurse, and now I'm doing good. Like I'm solid, God. Like I'm here waving the flag. Like I've done. I remember having this conversation, Kingsley, as bizarre as this sounds. Like I remember going, I've done my share. Like I've pulled up my freaking socks. Like I'm doing my share for greater good here. Like, so why are you doing this to me? And I remember having these conversations going, like, this isn't fair. Like, this just... I was just so disillusioned with everything, Kingsley, just so disillusioned. And I remember going to Australia to my cousin for a couple of weeks break. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was suffocating. I didn't want to go bankrupt. My head was just all over the place. I felt guilty because I was off in the sick. I couldn't go to work because I kept crying. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. And I remember going to Australia and saying, lying on a park on Bondi Road on Waverley Park, and just lying and going, my God, if you're an actual God, if you're up there, if there's something up there for a greater good, then you will give me a bloody crystal clear sign on what I need to do next, or I'm done. I'm just done with you. And I remember closing down my eyes, Kingsley, and everything went quiet. And all I got next was a smell of roses. And now I'd been to Medjugorje, which is a place in Croatia, a holy place where Our Lady was supposedly appeared. And when I was there, a guy had died, and that was in our group of diabetes. He collapsed and went under a diabetic coma and died. But why I'm saying that, Kings, is because when he passed, the clock on the Croatia in Medjugorje chimed, and I looked up and I just get this overwhelming sense that he had passed away. And then my friend got a phone call to say he's just passed away, and I was like, okay. But I had smelled the roses in Medjugorje, but when I was in Waverley, I smelled that same smell, and it brought me back to that sense of knowing and remembering the connection of someone passing, of a connection that's not of this world, that we can consciously, intellectually, humanly identify and say that that's logic, it makes sense. But for me, that was a connection that I had spiritually, something other than human, to say there's something else here guiding you. And that, in that, I just had this thing of go back, go bankrupt, you're going to be okay, but that is your right next step forward. And Kingsley, when I went home, I remember going up to Belfast to the court with my sister and being so nervous and so filled with dread. The court man, the judge is going to say to me, you were stupid for buying. He's going to say the same thing as your woman. You deserve to be here. Kingsley, I went down and there was about 40 other people because now we had the crash. Everything was gone. And he called my name up and there I am, sweating buckets, feeling sick to my stomach, trying not to cry, waiting for him to give me a whooping. And he just goes to me, Donna, love. He goes, I'm really sorry for what you've been through. He says, just go. He says, this is done. He says, just go and live your life. He says, you should never have had that. He says, but you're okay. That doesn't define you. He says, you just go now and you live your life. You're free. And Kingsley, for somebody to say that, me dreading and so afraid that I had messed up, that this was all my fault, that I deserved this, for again, some stranger to just go, Dawn, it's not your fault. That was not your fault. Like, just go now and live your life. And I remember just looking at my sister Sharon in pure disbelief. Kingsley, did he just say that? And I remember going out the door, and you know your man does the high kick out of Forrest Gump and just punches the air. I go out and do the air kick and punch the air and just roar into the air with my sister and give her the biggest hug. And it's like this weight is just off me, Kingsley. It's just like, but in my head, I tried all which ways to figure out how I could pay this off, how I could get out of this. Never in my wildest dreams. But if I hadn't have ignored that guidance that came to me that day in Waverley Park, I wouldn't have had the courage then to go through and to experience and that be part of me being free to start again.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing. And when you get a guidance like that from God and he's showing you stuff, it's unbelievable. That is so cool. That is so cool.
And you know what, Kingsley, I think it's important, like, because I know I'm very aware that not everybody relates to a God. And this is the thing, you don't have to. There is a universal source. There is something, and it doesn't matter what name you put on it. But there is a creative source and substance that we are all interlinked and interconnected with. So that's the thing. It's whatever your idea or non-idea or your thing is. Just start paying attention and just...
Yeah, listen, absolutely. He's directing, 100%. So then from there, take us on a little bit further, and because obviously you're living in WA now. So how did you get over here? Why? I understand why, but how did that all happen?
So after the nursing incident and after all of that, even after the judge and after all that was released, I'd went and I'd rented a house down where I grew up, close to my sister's house, but I wasn't expecting the aftermath of the 2 years of trauma and impact, and I think maybe the aftermath of everything. My mother, my teenage years, mistakes, drama, trauma, everything. And I was into personal development. So when you go into yourself, when you start digging deeper, when you start going internally inside, Kingsley, and looking, all this stuff comes up because it has to come up and come out to be released instead of forming as dis-ease and continuing down in the body. So when I was doing all that process, I actually went through a severe episode of depression where I actually wanted to end it. I had actually gone and got tablets and just said, you know what, actually I am physically and mentally exhausted, and this feeling, I thought the relief of the bankruptcy and everything else and starting fresh, I felt guilty because I should have felt good. I should have felt that continued relief, but I didn't. I felt more and more depressed, more guilty. And the more I started digging Kingsley, the worse it got. And it got to a point then where I just felt like I didn't want to be here anymore. So from that transit to calling my sister or having her on the other end of the phone by some magic while I was taking tablets, and then she's on the other end going, Donna, what's happening? And I'm a ball of tears going, how did I even ring you? Just this voice, pick up the phone and ring your sister. And somehow I'm sitting with the phone and her voice is in my ear. And I can see her house, her front door from my house front door. And I'm going, what is going on? Like, who has stepped in here? What has intervened again? And my sister took me in and cared for me. Her and her husband, John, they took me in and they looked after me and they cared for me. And it took me a while to get on an even footing. And at the time, my cousin was going through something herself. Her marriage had ended. And funny enough, we weren't really connected, Kingsley, until our granddad, being sick and then dying, brought us together at the funeral. Then we found out what was going on with each other and each other's worlds. And then that started a new trajectory. Her brothers were in Perth, Australia. They were both working in the mines. And I remember sitting out her backyard one day going, we were talking about going to Australia for 6 weeks. We both worked for the trust. And her mommy was like, well, why not just go for 6 months? The both of you take a career break. You have both been through a lot. Just go and live your life. You're not connected. You're not tied down. No kids, no partners, no nothing. And so that started the instigation of the love of Australia again. And we ended up going to Perth for 6 months. Kathy never came back. And I met my husband, Lee. Kathy met his best friend at our eldest boy's christening, and they're still together. And that started the love affair with Perth, Australia. But me and my husband, we had met in Sydney because that's where we were all living at the time. We moved back to Ireland for 9 years. And soon after going to Ireland, building our dream home, Kingsley, a couple of years in, and after having our other 2 boys, we realised that actually we miss the outdoor lifestyle. We miss that breath of fresh air. We miss that sunshine. We miss the environment, the relaxed way of being, the lifestyle, all of it. And that's where the idea then to come back to Australia came. But then we had issues with our house. They had put the wrong insulation in. We ended up having dry rot. We ended up getting sick. We ended up having to leave our home. We ended up going through another traumatic event as a family. And finally, we then attracted the right buyer to purchase the house office to give us the freedom to come back to Australia. So we come back to Perth, choosing Perth as a family area for us. And my cousin Kathy had moved back to Perth then from Sydney as well. So we came back here 3 years ago, and this is where we've been ever since.
It's quite a journey. It's really quite a journey. And through all of that, like, tell us a little bit about now how you are actually helping people, because it's what I love about people's stories is that without all of that ugliness, you wouldn't be in a place where you're helping so many people and changing their lives and helping them do so much right now. So what was a catalyst for you to go, you know what, I can actually take this and help other people now?
So the catalyst was when we were going through all the house stuff in Ireland, I had another breakdown, and it was just like, I just cannot do this anymore. There has to be a better way. So I then started with my own mentoring through my friend Melanie, who was doing Proctor Gallagher stuff. Then I became a consultant myself. So that elevated me into the coaching world to cut back on the nursing and start more in personal development in the coaching space. And then we came to Australia. So I had been doing the thinking under results and doing different things. And then when we came to Australia then in 2024, less than a year later, we were all in a car accident. And as a business owner, Kingsley, I had been doing all the right things, moving to a new country, connecting, networking, doing all the recommended things through business coaching, all of that, right words, right language, right things, right system, right funnel, right everything. And that car accident then halted everything. I had got a knock to the back of the head, which had created a knock on a nerve, which created occipital nerve issues with headaches, with awareness, with a lot of pain. And why I'm sharing that, Kingsley, is because that actually stopped me doing everything. Stopped me going out, stopped me having meetings, stopped me doing coaching, halted the business. And we had to deal with a lot of stuff then as a family, psychology, stuff with the kids, stuff with me, stuff with my husband, stuff with treatment. And that is what reframed everything for me. I was doing a bit, my business, The Good Life Approach was The Good Life Approach, but I was doing a lot of different things, legacy design, what am I going to do, what am I trying to do too much of everything. And I'm sure business owners or even people in jobs can relate. You're trying to multitask and do it all. And we're listening to people and we're sucked down a vortex in social media and we're sucked down a vortex and people saying you should do this. This is the right way. This is, but that just wiped the floors. Just put a pause on absolutely everything. How I run my business, how I operated, what I was doing, my capacity, just everything. And today, like when I look how the Good Life Approach has evolved into being a burnout specialist, when I talk about burnout, Kingsley, a great friend of mine's, Dave from Touchpoint, I had a session with him and he was like, Donna, when you're in the jar, you can't read the label. And I love, have you ever heard that before?
Yeah, it's great. So true.
But I looked at that and I was like, do you know what? Actually, I was like, that's so true. Because when I was in burnout, when I was in depression, when I was in the midst of overwhelming anxiety, I couldn't see it. I had no capacity. And I've heard this from people that do the toolbox or whatever. I wish I'd started it early. I felt like I didn't have the capacity. Why did I not do this? If I had knew what I know now, through the understanding, then I wouldn't have sat in the fence. I wouldn't have procrastinated. But it's like, don't beat yourself up. It's where we're aware. But the thing is, burnout has many faces. It's overwhelm. It's frustration. It's that sadness. It can be part of that low energy, feeling deflated, feeling lost, not in a position, feeling constantly anxious, feeling constantly turned on. Feeling constantly flat, simmering on edge, always anxious, always checking, always seeking, always searching, always doing the next new thing, the next shiny object. That overwhelm, that noise, that capacity to not switch off. And that's where I think you go back to all my threads, Kingsley, and all my story. When the car accident brought everything to a halt, it was like, just what do I need right now? Go back to the power of presence. What is going to serve me right now? I talk about the pause, check, reset, because it's the easiest thing in the world, Kings. Like my kids know this. When you pause, if I says to you to pause your current story, what's your story being today before you jumped on the call to record the podcast? Was it a good, supportive story of where you were winning and everything was going to go cruisy? Was it an overwhelm of noise of your to-do list of wrap this up, this has to be, like your energy is pretty chill there and present. So when you say to people, what's your current story? Pause it and become aware of it, because awareness is the first step to change. When you actually recognize then the repeated patterns, the repeated loops, the repeated themes, the repeated voice, the critic, the guilt, the stress, the response, the agitation. When you recognize that, Kingsley, you can then give yourself the permission to actually check in with your physical response. Am I tight? Am I tense? Am I agitated? Am I running on fumes, on coffee? Am I relaxed? Is my emotional state hyped up? Do I feel flat? Do I feel like I'm in fear or lack or limitation? Am I constantly checking my bank account? Am I constantly worried I'm going to lose people or I'm going to disconnect or my relationship's not great, that somebody's going to walk out? Whatever it is, if you give yourself permission to recognize what's going on, that body response, the human, that's just autopilot. It's just data that we have repeatedly programmed under our DNA. and it goes the path of least resistance. So it's just cruising. Do you know when you drive somewhere and you're like, and on night shift, this happened to me so often. I would leave my night shift and I would get home and I'd be like, oh my God, I do not remember the drive home. The automatic pilot comes on, and if we are not paying attention, when we're switched off, when we're down a rabbit hole and we're not aware, this is where being neutral and non-judgmental and just observing and then saying, do I give myself permission to look at this, and then do I give myself permission to actually reset? Do I want to reset from an anxious state or from a fear and lack and limitation? My husband will often say to me, if we have stuff going on, he'll be like, but Donna, how are you so calm? How are you so relaxed about this? And I'm like, we are experiencing the same scenario because we are a family unit. But I choose to perceive it in a different way. I choose to know and experience physically and view it in a different lens, in a different energy than how you choose to. And it gets paid off.
Yeah.
But it's true. This is why you can look at somebody in your work and they are so relaxed about the same thing, and you're like, why are you not at this? Or you're so enraged about something at home, and you're like, but why are you not? And they're like, because I choose to be empowered and I choose to sit in my knowing that I choose a different way. So this is the pause, check, reset. When you actually reset your energetic state, your point of attraction, your internal state that only you can do, that you're in charge of. When you empower yourself and give yourself permission to do that, Kingsley, your point of attraction changes, your vibration changes, your frequency changes. Not woo-woo, but science, because science has told us we live in a quantum field made of energy. We are all made of energy. Fact, scientific fact. So as opposed to woo-woo, if we take the science and actually say, okay, so if you're recommended to drink 2 litres of water, if I recommend to you to pause, check and reset your day for a different outcome, would you try and do it for the next 30 days, or would you commit to doing it for the next 30 days and watch how your results change? Experience it for yourself. It's that willingness.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's, when you think about it, it's a very simple thing, but we don't, because we do get on this, we just got to do our thing, do our thing, do our thing. And we don't stop doing our thing to stop and pause and take a look at what's going on, what's happening externally in my mind, in my body, with everything else that's happening. We don't take that time, and just that simple few steps can make a massive difference to how we think, how we approach things, what we do, what we don't do, to how we relate to people, all of that. Absolutely.
We both have an affinity for intentional living, for being intentional, the purpose behind why you're here, what you're doing, how you're showing up, even when you're brushing your teeth, even when you're making a dinner, when you're interacting behind closed doors, when there's no camera on, when you're not out. It's that pure, raw intention of who you're being in each moment that translates into your vision, your idea of the good life. And that's intentionally. There was so many times where I just wanted to stop, Kingsley. So many times. And I'm sure you're the same. And I'm sure people that are listening to this are the same, where it's just like, oh my God, can I really go again? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I'm 46 this week, and it's going 46 years of of adjusting and doing. And even from that first memory of 4.5, you're like, okay, your human does get tired, Kingsley, but is your life worth living? What's your greatest, grandest vision that you have for your life, for you, for the connection, and what your idea of your good life? What does that look like? What does it feel like? What does it translate into in your experience and connection and interaction with other people? Like, have a look at that, feel into your heart, feel into your internal guidance, and see what comes up.
I love that. I love that you call it your good life. I love that. I think that's awesome. So who do you mostly work with, Donna?
For me, Kingsley, it's individuals and organisations. So if you're an individual and you want support, you can either do one-to-one mentoring, or you can do one of the courses, the Daily Reset Toolbox, or one of the other ones. If you're an organisation or team, you can do, there's other ones there that you can do as well. The Toolbox is what I recommend for teams, for that tools and awareness to actually say, where are we at in this space? What is happening? What's going on for us? Because when you do the individual work, Kingsley, you know yourself, when you do the inner work on you, you automatically have your frequency that you radiate out to others, your attraction. When you're beside someone that feels good, you feel good, you want to be in the space. So when people do the individual work, but then connect as a collective, as a team, everybody's accountable, everybody's on board. Whether that's through the pause, check, reset workshop, or whether it's through the Daily Reset Toolbox, that becomes a powerful shift in collective consciousness within your organisation, within your team, and it doesn't just impact your work life, Kingsley, or your business. It impacts when you go home, because it's still a part of who you're being. That's how you're showing up.
Absolutely, it does. So how can if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Is it Facebook, Instagram, email? What's the best thing for you?
They can simply either connect with me on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, The Good Life Approach, or you can just go to the website, www.thegoodlifeapproach.com. Yeah, reach out to me, whatever way is easiest, yeah.
Now, question that I ask at the end of every podcast is how can you create the life you want and leave a legacy that you're proud of?
It's your intentional design. It's that simple, Kingsley. Just do a pause, a check, and a reset, and intentionally choose your version of the good life.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah, but Kingsley, this is a thing, and this is what I say in my podcast. The very first one is, what is your idea of the good life? Because most of us don't know when we're asked. How can you create it if you don't know what it is?
Yeah, and that's the first place I go with people as well. And surprisingly, most people have not really dug into that as a real question for themselves and where they're heading. It's really interesting.
But you wouldn't take a roadmap you wouldn't just gauge your way down random roads to go to a specific destination.
Donna, thank you so much for joining us on the Tomorrow's Not Today podcast. Some great stories, some great insights there. And I think for me, one of the biggest things is people hopefully can take away from that, you know what, it doesn't matter where I am or what I've done or what's done to me or anything else. You can take that pause and the reset and adjust and get intentional about where you're going, create the life you want, leave a legacy that you're proud of, which is exactly what you're doing now. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Donna. Have a fantastic day. Look forward to getting this out there.
Yeah, cheers, Kingsley. Thank you.